Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th Annual Kabuki Syndrome Foundation Conference. We're so grateful to have you with us today. A heartfelt thank you to the entire KSF team, especially Dr. Jessica Weatherstone, Amanda Gamboa, and Dr. Clara Tang, whose dedication has been instrumental in making this conference possible. Thank you also to our donors, global community members, and presenters. Your generous funding and active participation in research are vital to advancing our mission. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. Please reference the agenda in the menu bar to the left to help plan your day. Don't forget to use the chat and Q&A features to interact with attendees and panelists. You'll have the chance to connect in breakout rooms at the end of the meeting. This conference is being recorded and will be available for viewing after the event. Now allow me to introduce myself. I'm Janet Lee, the Executive Director of the Kabuki Syndrome Foundation, but my most important job is the mother of Emily, my curious and compassionate 15-year-old daughter. Emily's Kabuki syndrome diagnosis inspired me to take an active role in the foundation by transforming the hope of treatments into a reality. Kabuki syndrome is a rare genetic disorder that brings lifelong challenges, many of which can arise unexpectedly. Despite the documented burden of this syndrome, there is no treatment. We're here to change that. During today's conference, you'll discover how the Kabuki Syndrome Foundation is driving treatment development and hear why researchers believe therapies for Kabuki syndrome are within reach. We'll explore the current drug development pipeline, new research milestones, and opportunities for families to shape clinical trials. And finally, we'll conclude with our most popular segment, a panel discussion featuring adults with Kabuki syndrome sharing their experiences and insights. At this time, I'd like to begin the slideshow, please. Since 2018, the Kabuki Syndrome Foundation, also known as KSF, has been dedicated to advancing research to develop life-changing treatments for individuals affected by this rare disease. As the global hub for Kabuki syndrome, we fund groundbreaking research, organize a community to advance research, and enable collaboration for researchers and clinicians worldwide. We are dedicated to empowering you and your family with knowledge, resources, and hope for a healthier future for your child. Next slide, please. Finding treatments requires a coordinated, collaborative approach involving patients, clinicians, and researchers from diverse backgrounds, all working under a shared game plan. Here you can see a snapshot of institutions that are in our network. Next slide. Over the past 3 years, KSF has grown significantly. With a skilled team in place, including Dr. Bruce Bloom and Dr. Clara Tang, who collectively have 20 years of combined drug development experience, we have direct access to expertise and industry connections, accelerating advancements and creating new possibilities for our community. Thanks to the generosity of our donors, I am proud to share that KSF has committed $2.4 million to advancing Kabuki syndrome research. We support 13 active research grants across 14 academic institutions and 4 industry partners. These initiatives span a wide range of critical areas, from uncovering the mechanisms of the disease to accelerating promising drug candidates in the development pipeline. Your continued support has made this progress possible. Thank you. Next slide. I'm so excited to share some of our key milestones from 2024. This year, we awarded $700,000 in new grants to fuel drug discovery and advance therapeutic development. In October of 2023, we launched a consortium to develop Kabuki-specific tools that will measure treatment efficacy in future clinical trials. Data and samples from 73 participants have been collected thus far, and we're excited to announce the addition of a new member site, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Dr. Brittany Simpson will be joining us later in the program to share more. We partner with scientists and the rare disease community to share ideas, resources, and expertise. To date, we've engaged over 464 participants in 6 active Kabuki syndrome studies. Our global contact registry, Kabuki Count, the largest of its kind, includes 1,208 individuals diagnosed with Kabuki syndrome from 57 countries, providing vital access for research participation. And finally, this year, we applied to the CDC for a Kabuki-specific ICD-10 code to support research, determine prevalence, and aid in insurance approvals. We hope to secure the code by October next year, and we'll provide updates as they come. Next slide, please. We are at the forefront of taking breakthrough research from dream to reality with LEAP, our strategic research roadmap. This $2.4 million investment in research supports 3 key areas: learning more about Kabuki syndrome, advancing potential candidates in the therapeutic pipeline, and preparing for clinical trials. These grants are targeting the following outcomes by the end of 2025. New validated pathways and treatment targets for Kabuki syndrome, including a list of repurposed drugs that can potentially treat Kabuki syndrome, which would be followed by testing lead candidates in Kabuki mice in 2026. Finalize preclinical research to support the launch of 2 clinical trials in early 2026, pending funding. And through KSOC, validated endpoints to measure treatment efficacy during a clinical trial. We have made tremendous progress. These are exciting developments and show us that treatments for Kabuki syndrome are indeed possible, but it will take all of us working together to make it happen. I now invite you to watch a video showing the power of our collaborative research network.
So we book it for an hour, but it doesn't take an hour. I have always been very interested specifically in intellectual disability and cognitive impairment more broadly.
Perfect. You're doing really, really, really good.
You know, when I was in medical school, it was kind of dogma that intellectual disability was untreatable. It's something that happened in utero, in the womb, and you couldn't do anything about it after birth.
The knowledge basis for these particular for the rare diseases was really limited.
There had been some evidence for a while that there could be some postnatal treatment, and I wanted to follow up on this and see if it was true. The gene for Kabuki was mapped, and I said, look, this is a new disorder, no one's working on it, I'd like to work on it.
So we kind of started asking the questions when the tools became available. Why does a certain child have certain symptoms? What is the underlying mechanism?
Development does not finalize in the womb. You know, humans continue to develop after they're born. And I think perhaps if we could support the function of that gene, even if we don't fix the gene, we might be able to minimize the effects of having a dysfunctional gene after birth.
So then I became very interested in taking the work that had been done, looking at animal models and things like that, and bringing that into human beings, and eventually bringing that to clinical trials. You know, what would you say your Kabuki syndrome most affects your brain? The Kabuki Syndrome Foundation has successfully brought together researchers doing work in Kabuki syndrome, some of which, you know, may not have known that other labs or other people were doing work in Kabuki syndrome, and have brought about multiple collaborations.
As we got kind of deeper into understanding how rare disease works, it's just so clear that, you know, we're never going to be able to do this as a single center or with a single set of people. It's going to have to be a collaboration, and it has to be a global collaboration.
It really is setting up a infrastructure that enables doctors to access common elements, common data elements.
We're looking super in detail here, and this is
By focusing on Kabuki syndrome treatment pathways, it's a microcosm to a much larger medical issue.
If we are able to identify a therapeutic approach that would address the underlying mechanism, that therapeutic approach could then be applicable to other conditions in the same area.
You know, when you look going back at the Kabuki syndrome mouse models, the fact that there are therapeutics that exist that can reverse symptoms of Kabuki syndrome, like intellectual disability, I mean, the gravity of that is huge.
One thing that we have learned is People with Kabuki syndrome tend to have actually very good social skills. They tend to have quite good language skills, especially their expressive language or the way they express themselves to other people.
What's yawning?
But their visuospatial cognitions, their ability to understand the world and look at it and put all the pieces together from a visual perspective and a movement perspective is extremely impaired.
Fantastic.
I think what we are optimistic about is that at some point in time, hopefully in the not too distant future, we are able to understand the mechanism behind Kabuki syndrome.
I will be the principal investigator of this multi-center trial that will be the first ever industry-sponsored clinical trial in Kabuki syndrome, and one of the first clinical trials to ever look at cognitive improvement as its primary outcome measure. So this is really, really exciting.
I still think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think there are many possible avenues. And I think in the next few years, we're going to have multiple breakthroughs for various rare diseases. And I hope Kabuki is going to be one of those that's going to have a clinical avenue.
It is only the beginning, so we need a lot of commitment from donors, a lot of commitment from the foundation, a lot of commitment from patients and their families to help drive this forward.
There is this real possibility that their lives can be drastically improved.
I think it's about the extraordinary impact you can have and just giving these kids the chance that they deserve to have a wonderful life.
"95% of rare diseases do not have treatments. The fortunate 5% of rare diseases that do were made possible by parents and patients who organize and create change. There are 9 therapeutic pathways actively in progress. As a community, we must take the lead in driving research and fundraising if we want to find a treatment." In the next segment, Dr. Clara Tang, the KSF Director of Research, will walk through the Kabuki syndrome therapeutic pipeline, including investments and strategies to accelerate clinical trials for lead candidates. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Clara Tang to the stage.